Wanna give me a surprise?
Oh, what is that? Oh, what's that?
That's a glider I made for you.
You made that?
I did, yes.
Oh, that is awesome. You really made that?
I did, yes.
Oh my God.
That was my mother-in-law, or as I affectionately call her, Mom Number 2. A few months ago, they got a new TV, and she asked me to build her a new TV stand for it. Well, I put about 20 hours into the design of the TV stand, and to my surprise, and hers, it ended up looking a lot more like a bench glider. You see, a while ago, she was over at my parents' house, and she fell in love with a glider they had purchased almost 30 years ago that has miraculously withstood the wet springs, humid summers, foggy falls, and icy winters of northwest Indiana. My second mom loves being outside, and while her old house had tons of outdoor furniture, a deck, and a huge backyard, she lost a lot of that when she moved. Now the only furniture that we use outside there are those canvas folding chairs, and, well, darn it, this is why Martin Luther King Jr. marched through the streets of cities in the South. This is why Gandhi walked to the ocean to make salt. This is why Irish patriots in British prisons died on hunger strikes. My mother-in-law deserves to be able to sit outside, relax, and drink her freaking coffee. And while I can't promise this is going to last 30 years, I sure as heck can over-engineer some outdoor furniture for her. I began by creating the frame of the bench. Here you can see me using my jigsaw to carve out part of the frame, making the bench more comfortable by contouring it to the shape of a butt. If you're wondering how I did the calculations and the science for the curve, I didn't. I just kind of sketched it on with the pencil, keeping in mind that I wanted the curve to be on the seat of the bench without going under the back of the bench, which was reclined at 10 degrees. I also wanted to have room to curve the front of the bench forward and then underneath itself, so once I cut out the curve, I rounded the front with a jigsaw too. The decision to round the front under itself was kind of a late one. Had I known I was doing this, I probably would have used 2x6 boards for the bottom rather than these 2x4s. My solution was to use a scrap piece of 2x3 lumber from my mom's sofa table project and create a small block with a rounded corner that would fit underneath each piece of the frame. To avoid cutting small pieces with either my jigsaw or my miter saw, which could potentially be dangerous, I decided to make these one at a time. First by cutting the curve with the jigsaw, and then cutting it out from the bigger piece of wood as a block. Here you see me cutting towards my hand with a jigsaw. Although this is potentially dangerous and perhaps incredibly stupid, please do keep in mind that it's only my left hand. All it's really good for is leaving fingerprints on my artwork. I'm right-handed, but if you happen to be one of those left-handed pagans, please take the proper safety precautions and make sure you only ever cut towards your right hand. This is actually pretty interesting. Here you see me using the jigsaw to make two cuts at once. One in the 2x3 block and another in the top of my workbench. If you've ever wanted to see a guy cut off his finger in a woodworking video on YouTube, then consider hitting that subscribe button because it's bound to happen at some point. With those blocks finally made, I decided it was time to duplicate the first piece of the bottom of the bench. Although the bench is only 5 feet wide and I probably could have gotten away with only using 3 supports for the bench, we've got some big dudes and a crazy kid in this family, and in the interest of over-engineering everything, I decided to use 4. I then used my Wen combination belt and disc sander to smooth out the curves, similar to how I did for the Star Trek piece. I got the first piece exactly how I wanted it, then used that as a template to refine the curves of the other pieces. The curves just couldn't be too radical or bumpy because they were going to have 1x2s glued and nailed to them, so they needed to sit almost completely flush on that curve. Then I glued and screwed the 4 blocks to the bottom of those 4 supports. I didn't have any screws long enough to go all the way through the 2x3, so I used a 1/4-inch spade to drill a hole halfway through the 2x3 and then put a screw in there.
That's no good.
Alright, what's happening here is that my drill bit is a 1/4-inch thick and exactly the thickness of the hole. It doesn't help that my star bit tends to grab these screws really tight anyways. This is just causing the bit to get completely stuck in the hole. I eventually got the bit out and proceeded to drill the remaining holes. Because I recorded it, I know that I spent exactly 26 minutes and 48 seconds trying to get my bit out of these tight holes. It wasn't until the last one that I thought to switch to a 5/8 inch spade bit. That would have been the smart thing to do from the beginning. After the bottom supports were done, it was time to cut out the back supports. I thought about adding an ergonomic curve to these, but I know from being tall and having chronic back pain from an injury from when I was in the Air Force that what's a supportive ergonomic backrest for one person is a torture device for someone else. And since my second mom is so short and I'm so tall, I figured that whatever I designed would probably just make the bench less comfortable in general, so I decided to just leave it straight. I also wanted to round off the top, but I didn't want the same big radius I had on the bottom. Instead, I cut the corners off the top of the 2x4s at 45 degrees. This would allow the 1x2s to turn 45, 90, and 135 degrees off from the back. If I try to round this 2x4 with a radius like it did at the bottom, the 2x4s just wouldn't make enough contact with enough of the surface area of the support for the wood glue and nails to work, and since this was end grain, it was all the more important that I had every bit of contact possible. Anyway, I'm gluing and nailing these 1x2s to the bench. The wood glue is going to do most of the bonding here, so if the nails ever come up or loosen, they can be easily pulled out without weakening the bench. However, editing the nailing is just a lot more fun than editing the smearing of glue. Well, next up are the supports for the armrests. There are 4 in total, 2 front and 2 back. While they all have similar decorative curve patterns in them, the back supports are pitched forwards at 15 degrees, while the front supports are perpendicular to the bottom supports. I'm not really sure the back supports are necessary here, but they add a really nice and professional quality to the bench, as you'll see at the end. I don't think my mother-in-law would have cared if they didn't have the decorative curves on them, or if the back ones just weren't there at all, but I'm an artist at heart, as I think a lot of woodworkers are. If you can make something just a little nicer for a loved one, you're going to take the time and do it. At least that's what I think. I don't know, maybe some of you just hate your mother-in-laws, but your wife is coercing you into building something for her. Maybe you write evil things where you're gluing the wood together so she'll never see them, but you'll smile every time you see her sitting on it, knowing the dark spirits you summoned with your project are working to make her suffer with hemorrhoids from hell. But I like my second mom, and I don't dabble with the occult, so I decided to make this bench as nice as I knew how. Just as before, I used the belt sander to smooth out the insides of the template, and then I used that template to hone in the other piece. I then took all 4 supports to my router table to give them a 1/4 inch round over. I'm wearing this gas mask because my allergies had gotten worse, but it also works as a respirator and eye protection. I got a comment about that during my last woodworking video. Eric Poley. With the armrest supports done, it was time to make them something to support. And what better to support with 4 armrest supports than 2 armrests? That was seriously a tongue twister. It took me 5 takes to get that right. Sheesh. I cut out their basic shapes with my jigsaw, this time demonstrating how to use a jigsaw if you don't want to mangle one of your hands. Now, once I attach the armrest, I won't be able to flip the bench over as easily, so I changed gears here and put 2 60-inch 2x4s on the bottom, or 5 inches for those of you using the superior duodecimal base 12 number system. It's like metric, only it makes math easy. To ensure that they were centered, I nailed a small block to the 2x4s on either side of the bench. Since I was working alone, these positive stop blocks helped make sure everything was properly lined up while I did my thing. Still, a pair of steady hands would have helped on the back one, but I managed. Once glued and screwed into place on the bench, I just had to carefully remove the blocks. To do this required the incredible skill and finesse with the most advanced tools in my shop. Sorry, I'm not currently looking to take on apprentices. Because the 1x2s were slightly longer than the frame of the bench, I needed to trim a few of them flush to make room for the armrest supports. I used a flush trim router bit in my plunge router to take care of most of them, but a couple of them in the corner of the bench couldn't be reached with a router or a flush trim saw. For those, I used what I call my handgun saw from Cobalt. I have no idea what it's supposed to be called, but you hold it like a handgun, so I call it a handgun saw. No! This killed me. Keep in mind that self-drilling screws are not always self-drilling. I needed to create a new armrest support after this, which was a pain since my template now had a round over in it, but eventually I managed to create a new one. So after a couple hours of crying in the bathroom and rework, I was ready to try attaching the pre-drilled armrest supports using wood glue and screws, and happily everything went exactly as planned. Except, well, I forgot to plan how I would attach the armrest to the support. I planned on using pocket holes to do this, but I forgot to put them in the armrest supports. But then I got a really brilliant idea. Remember that time I got that drill bit stuck in the hole? The times that happened? Well, what if I did that with dowels? It's called dowel joinery. I've only ever tried it a couple times before, and I've always messed it up because I didn't have a jig or anything for it. But the circumstances here were perfect for making it easy without even a jig. I used my 5/8 inch spade bit and drilled a hole through the armrest and some distance into the armrest support. I then put a 5/8 inch dowel in the hole and measured how long I should cut it. I then put a bunch of glue in the hole and on the dowel and put it in. I was worried the dowel would get stuck before going all the way in, but the wood glue kind of worked as a lubricant, so it worked out really well. I then rubbed sawdust all over it to make the wood glue indistinguishable from the wood. Now, I know there are a lot of woodworkers out there who hate pocket holes and think they're a cheap hack tool that prevents schmucks from ever learning proper wood joinery. And those same people would probably prefer this dowel joinery over a pocket hole joinery thing. Anyway, in this case, the dowel joinery was actually easier than the pocket holes, but I was still kind of upset about it. You see, I don't really care about anti-pocket hole snobbery. I use them when it makes sense to use them. However, as you may recall, I wanted to make a really nice bench for my mother-in-law. I may have avoided pocket holes for this normally, but I want you to remember back in January when I did an unboxing video for the Craig pocket hole jig. In that video, I not only said it was my second mom who got this for me, but that I was going to build her something nice using it.
Thank you to my mother-in-law for this awesome gift, mom number 2. I will be making you something to thank you for this.
And this is one of the ways that woodworking becomes art for me. It's not just what is made, but how it's made that is art. By putting pocket holes in here, I'm telling my second mom thank you every time she sees these pocket hole plugs. Now, granted, I'm not sure she knows what pocket holes are, or what the jig does, or even why there's ovals in parts of the wood. I mean, she might if she watches this video, but if she does watch the video, she's probably going to get triggered because I put her in the video right after she finished her shift at the hospital. But from an artistic perspective, these pocket holes are important. I feel this way about the MS Paint comic and the other art I create too, but that's a topic for another video. Anyway, all the cutting you're seeing me do here is for the base that the bench is going to hang from. Just like the frame for the bench, this is all 2x4 lumber. The 45-degree miter cuts I'm making here are for braces that are going to provide support for the legs. As you'll see later on, these pieces are going to have to be modified to account for a design change. However, I learned my lesson from the bench and I put all of my pocket holes in the wood before doing anything else. All 4 legs are each getting 4 pocket holes, 2 of which will be front and center, begging to be noticed. I wanted the bench to have a rounded, soft, and welcoming appearance, so I'm putting a half-circle curve on the tops and bottoms of the base with the jigsaw and then smoothing it out with the belt and disc sander just like I did with the bench. But this is where I goofed, and you'll see why in a little bit. You may have noticed that I'm not wearing a respirator here, and that's because I apparently love to torture myself with wood boogers for days after sanding. I recently got a new shop vac that should hopefully make dust collection a little bit more feasible for me, thanks Mom and Dad number 1, but I got that just as I was finishing this project, so it's wood boogers for me. Here I'm attaching the legs to the bottom of the frame using pocket hole screws and a block to ensure I have consistent 5.5 inch spacing between the legs. After that, I needed to prepare the arms. To do that, I took them over to the router table where I used the same 1/2 inch router roundover bit that I used on the armrest and their supports. And a special thanks to my wife here for filming these shots. Doing a couple of woodworking videos has given me mad respect for the dedicated solo YouTube woodworkers out there who have to set up their shots for each and every cut that they make. It's a pain in the butt, and I don't even worry myself with professional lighting setup and sound setup and all that other stuff. It's really amazing to me that they can get anything done, so kudos to those guys too. It was then time to attach the rounded over arm to the frame, again using that block for spacing. And am I the only one who enjoys the duck orgasm sound a drill makes? Then I began to sand those braces to stabilize the legs. I hit all 4 sides, making them nice and smooth. But remember when I said I goofed? Well, here it is. When I rounded over the bottom of the frame, I failed to consider that the brace was designed to go all the way to the end. This created an ugly overhang that I was just not okay with. I mean, if I put this on the garage floor, I would probably cut my foot open with it like this. And yeah, I could stop wearing sandals in the shop, but Jesus was a carpenter and he wore sandals. So I could either risk Jesus cutting his foot open on this or fix it. And being a God-fearing man and believing that Jesus has bled enough for my sins, including neglectfulness, I decided to fix it. To do that, I decided to do a geometry experiment. I set the plate in front of my disc center to 45 degrees and slowly hogged out a rounded edge. And you know what? It worked. I screwed them into place and that was that. Next I needed to further stabilize the legs. My original plan was to use those spacing blocks I had been using as a beam running between the two legs going about halfway up, but I didn't want to screw into end grain. I thought about running a dowel in there, but then I remembered how dowel joinery saved the armrest, and I thought it'd be more fitting and appropriate, artistically, to instead put a dowel running between the legs here. This would have been easier had I planned for this ahead of time and had a drill press, but I figured I could wing it with a 3/4 inch spade bit and a dowel. I mean, why not, right? I did use a smaller drill bit to pre-drill a path here. My rationale was that the spade would travel the path of least resistance, and if there's a hole already in there, it would just follow that path. In hindsight, though, that was probably stupid. It almost didn't work. If I had to do this again, I might just throw some screws in there, figuring that there'd be no real lateral force on those screws in the end grain to tear it apart. I then used a hammer and brute force to force the dowel through the first hole and into the second. I almost forgot to put wood glue on the ends before finishing it, but I remembered, although I don't think this dowel is going anywhere with or without glue. I then used Pittsburgh Paramount Honey Base to finish and seal all of the surfaces. Chocolatey. Seriously though, the fumes from this stuff made my eyes burn unlike anything I've ever experienced since I was gassed in basic training. Be sure to use with caution and a natural fiber brush.
Well, it's raining outside today, so I had to finish the staining process in the garage. This is the last coat of stain I'm putting on. I want you to take a look at this. I used all of the quart, and that's entirely by design. I just thought you should know that. I actually planned the surface area of this thing and how far the stain would go, and yeah, I designed that perfectly. Totally. Perfectly. Yeah. Completely by design. Yes.
With the finish applied, all that was left to do was to give it my stamp of approval. I love my stamp of approval.
Oh, what is that? Oh, what's that?
That's a glider I made for you.
You made that?
I did, yes.
Oh, that is awesome. You really made that?
I did, yes.
Oh my God. I need sit.
Early birthday present. Figure it'd be nice for you to enjoy it before your birthday.
Oh, that is so nice.
Oh, look at Porthos. He's like, look, Nana, look what I made.
I made it. Porthos helped.
Where did you hide it?
In my garage.
Oh, see, I don't go in the garage no more.
Right.
Yep.
We were going out of our way to keep the garage door shut when we knew we were coming in.
Well, thank you. Oh, he's pooping. Thank you, guys. Oh, I love it.
If you liked the video, please let me know by hitting that like button or leaving a comment. And if you'd like to see my future videos, consider subscribing to my channel. This glider bench turned into the largest and most ambitious woodworking project and video project I've ever taken on. I literally recorded 478 minutes and 49 seconds of video footage and 122 different video files for this one YouTube video, and I didn't even record everything I did. But I really wanted to share this with you, and viewers like you are the reasons why I stuck with it. So thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see more, I have a video of my Star Trek project on the right, as well as another video that YouTube thinks you're going to love based on your viewing history.